The Texas Workforce Commission is still accepting applications from those living in counties that are included in the federal disaster declaration. Residents in East Texas could qualify for disaster unemployment assistance. Those applications, they're due by July 16th. East Texas News Weekend's Vanessa Johnson has the details for you.
Those who live in a county listed in the federal disaster declaration have another form of relief that the Texas Workforce Commission wants to remind people of.
The disaster unemployment assistance is here to help supplement anyone who may be experiencing a lack of income because their employment status has been affected.
Disaster unemployment assistance, or DUA, is federally funded and is a response to FEMA. As of Friday, June 14th, 678 claims have been submitted.
These applications are for people who have their employment status impacted directly by the disaster and not a chain of events caused by the disaster.
TWC has not sent payments or notified applicants of approvals as they are still awaiting the funds. However, they are reviewing claims and making preliminary decisions. Applications are submitted online by creating a TWC account or by phone.
If someone's status of employment was directly impacted by this disaster, then they should absolutely apply and see if they qualify for benefits.
Proof that you were working or were scheduled to work at the time of the disaster will need to be submitted. All documentation has to be submitted within 21 days of the application being filed. Vanessa Johnson, East Texas News Weekend.
To see if you could qualify and to apply, you can visit the KLTV or KTRE websites, search for the big red box. Or you can scan the QR code on your screen right now. There you'll find a link and a phone number to submit an application.